Hey guys, Adam in the Aeroworks workshop, and today we're going to cover some common questions, the top 10 questions that you guys have had for us after taking our Academy courses online, whether it be the Drones 101 course or more importantly, the FAA How to Apply for a Section 333 Exemption course that takes you through the complete process. We give you a downloadable template, we give you all the documents, all the links, we talk about aircraft registration, reserving an IN number, and so on. But still, we get a lot of questions via email and phone calls, so we wanted to cover those today in a segment called the Top 10 FAA FAQs. So let's go ahead and get started. Number one question, the pilot's license requirement. Do I really need a pilot's license to fly a drone? And the answer is yes, if you are following the Section 333 guidelines that allow you to fly drones commercially. We'll get into all the other comments and the other questions about whether or not the FAA has a leg to stand on. But if you're following the 333 guidelines, you do have to have a private pilot, sport pilot, or other FAA certificate to operate drones legally. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can actually get a pilot's license, and we'll cover that a little bit later in the segment when we talk about what type of a license qualifies to fly a drone. Number two, the types of pilot certificates that meet the requirement for a pilot under a Section 333 exemption. Now, it used to be that the FAA required a private pilot or higher license to qualify to fly drones commercially. They've since loosened that rule up a little bit, and now they're allowing sport pilot, recreational pilots, and so on. This requires much less time, much less money, and there are even some kind of neat tricks you can do with the sport pilot's license. One of those being a balloon certificate or a powered parachute. If you've ever seen power gliding or parasailing, maybe in Mexico or on vacation, a powered parachute is your cheapest option when it comes to getting a pilot certificate under the new sport pilot regulations. And a powered parachute essentially is a three-wheeled cradle that has a parachute or a canopy of some type and an engine on the back, and it allows you to power and go up or down and fly around. Now, the FAA recognizes this as a sport pilot certificate, therefore it will now qualify for your exemption, and a powered parachute sport pilot certificate can be received within that $2,500 to $3,000 range on the top end, and it requires much less time than something like a full-fledged LSA sport pilot certificate or a private pilot certificate, which requires 40 hours or more to obtain. Number three, we get asked a lot, do I apply for an IN number or do I apply for this new FAA hobbyist registration while I'm waiting? Well, the answer is, what do you plan on doing with your aircraft? If you're only going to use it for hobby purposes, then by all means go online, pay $5 and register under the hobbyist rule, apply that unique number to all your aircraft, and you're done. If you plan on operating that same aircraft for commercial purposes, you need to have an IN number, which is done through the paper application process, and we cover that in our videos. And even though you may be waiting for your exemption, you can still fly hobbyist flights with an IN numbered aircraft. Now, the IN number still takes up to 6 weeks to get, but when you fill out that paperwork, it's a carbon copy. It's actually the old-fashioned way. It's a paper application, and that carbon copy that you keep is actually your registration while you wait for your actual IN number to be issued to you officially on an actual aircraft registration certificate. So if you're out flying around and someone comes up to you and says, hey, you're supposed to be registered, where's your number from the FAA? You can take out that piece of paper and show them that you have registered, that you do commercial operations, and you need to have a IN number, which you are waiting on. Therefore, the hobbyist does not apply. Now, some people say, well, what if I want to fly my commercial aircraft on the weekends for fun? Can I do that? And the answer is yes. We've got that straight from the FAA. What it comes down to is however you plan on using your aircraft, that's the rules you follow. So if you're out flying as a hobbyist, regardless if you have an IN number or the new FAA registration number, if you're flying as a hobbyist, follow the hobbyist rules. Don't fly above 400 feet, don't fly around an airport, don't fly around people, and so on. If you're flying on the commercial side, and today's Monday and you're going to be flying commercially, You need to file and note them. You need to do all the same steps that you would do when you're working as a commercial operator. Number 4, and again, these are in no particular order, but when you're filing for the IN number, do I file and register as a personal, individual, or an S Corp or an LLC? That's really up to you. Obviously, if you're doing commercial work, an LLC and a corporation provides you with some protection against being sued over, whatever may happen with your aircraft. But the individual route is essentially individual. So you apply with your name, your personal address, and that's really the end of it. When you get into S Corp and LLC, you're going to need to provide some additional information like the affidavit, the certificate of affidavit. You're also going to need to provide a document that needs to be notarized. You're also going to have to provide your articles of organization. Now, we cover all this in our registration on our Aeroworks Academy site, and we'll go into that in more detail on those sites, and we encourage you to check the link below and check those out. But really, the two differences are individual or company. The companies are going to require a lot more documentation, but it's also going to provide you with a lot more protection when you're out there operating as a business should something go wrong. Manuals for your aircraft. Do I upload manuals for my aircraft? Well, in the a year or two ago, when the FAA was just starting out with the commercial exemption process, they didn't have a clue what was going on. They didn't know a Phantom 3 from a Phantom 1 or a DJI this or that. So yes, it was definitely a benefit to download the PDF manuals from your individual manufacturer's website and upload them along with your exemption application or request to the docket. You really don't need to anymore. The FAA knows all the DJI line, they know all the 3DR line, they know the Unique, they know the Sky Ranger, they know all the common ones. It doesn't hurt to add that in, but know that if you forget or you don't upload your Phantom 3 manual, you're not going to get kicked back. What you do need to do is if you have a custom built copter, let's say you built a DJI Flame Wheel 450 and you built it from a kit, you want to make sure and include either your own operations manual giving all those specifics like flight time and fail safes and motor capacity and battery capacity and all those different things. You want to write your own manual and upload that, because if you submit that and they don't have a clue what you're talking about or what model you've submitted, you may get a delay, and before you know it, you're going to be waiting 6 months only to get a letter saying that we don't have a clue what aircraft you're applying for. That brings up another question. We'll call this kind of a part 2 to that same question, is when you apply for your exemption, you want to make sure and submit all the aircraft that you may think you're going to fly. If you just submit a Phantom 3 and 8 months from now you get your exemption and you've went out and bought a Phantom 4, your Phantom 4 is not on your exemption, and therefore it's not covered. So you need to anticipate the future a little bit, and you need to pick all the aircraft that you're going to buy or possibly operate. And in fact, just this week, there was another company that was exempted from over 1,500 UAV models. They basically went out, they picked every make and model, brand, so on, and they put the whole thing on their list in anticipation that they may fly any of those. So while I don't necessarily agree with that, it's not necessarily the worst idea either, because if you're not quite sure what you're going to buy or what you might buy a year from now or 6 months from now, definitely cover all your bases. If you own a Phantom now and you think you might buy an Inspire, put an Inspire on there, put an Inspire Pro and so on. That way you've got your bases covered. Let's talk about amending your exemption. Now, a lot of people go, well, I already submitted my exemption and now I went out and I bought a Phantom 4. What am I going to do now? Well, the process is, if your exemption has hit the docket, meaning it's on regulations.gov and it's actually showing up on there, you'll want to go into your specific docket number and you want to add a comment and you'll want to upload a request pretty much on your letterhead or letter directly from you stating that we would like to amend our exemption request and add the following aircraft, and list those aircraft on there and explain that they meet all the same requirements and limitations that your original exemption request had in them, and that you would like to amend these additional aircraft. Submit that through the regulations.gov website as a comment, and when they get to your exemption request, the FAA will review not only the original request, but the additional amendment that you have uploaded, and hopefully they'll combine the two and add those in there. Now, if you already have your exemption, it's still the same process. You want to go back to your original exemption request, add a comment, upload the new docket, and they will eventually get to that. Now, who knows how long it's taking? You know, last summer it was taking about 3 months. Now we're up to 6-8 months. I mean, there's over 12,000 exemptions currently on the books, and we're up to about 3,000 or 4,000 being approved, so you can imagine how long the wait is. A lot of people are asking about the new Micro UAS category. Now, this would be great. They're talking about a 4.4 pounds or 4.5 pounds or less, doing away with the pilot certificate and that. I don't know really why they would do that, if it's in the name of safety. If they want to hold commercial operators to a higher standard, I'm not sure why they would split that and allow Phantoms to fly but not Inspires and so on. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We know how long it's taken to get the exemption process moving, and even if they were to implement the Micro UAS rules in the summer of 2016, there's still amount of time that needs to pass to implement that. So if you're in the middle of applying for your exemption, I would continue to do that. If they do come out with the Micro UAS rule, great. That means they may loosen up the pilot requirement. And again, guys, for those who don't know, a lot of people who don't come from an aviation background or even an RC background are like, why in the heck is the FAA requiring me to have a pilot's license to fly a plastic drone? Well, it has nothing to do with actually piloting this drone here or even an expensive drone. It has to do with the knowledge of regulations and airspace and weather and communications and all the things that you learn when you go to ground school or pilot school. And up until, now, the FAA really has had no way to ensure that pilots operating in the national airspace knew these things other than saying, well, let's just make sure that they're all pilots. So is it the right way? No, it's not. Could we learn it in the ground school? Sure, we could. We offer classes. We offer a Drones 101 course on our Academy site. I encourage you to check that out. We'll put a link down in the description. But again, up until they change something or they come out with the Part 107 UAS operator's license, there's really no other way to do it. Section 333 exemption, pilot certificate, and hopefully you can operate as a commercial operator. We get a lot of questions about insurance, and if you're going to do commercial operations, you're most likely going to need or be requested to have liability insurance, and most policies for these types of aircraft start at about $1 million of coverage, and depending on the cost of the aircraft is where your dollar amount for an annual fee is going to come in. Now, we have an Inspire just recently that was insured, and you can expect to pay anywhere from $750, $850, all the way up to $1,300 a year per aircraft, and that is just to cover the liability portion. Now, if you want to cover the aircraft itself for a crash, that's typically anywhere from 10 to 30% of the overall value of the aircraft per year added on to the limited liability. Now, if you need more coverage, let's say you have a job and you have $1 million of liability, you want to make sure that you have an insurance company that will allow you to up that ante, so to speak, let's say from $1 million to $5 million or $1 million to $3 million by just simply making a phone call. Typically, they will do that. Most insurance companies will do that. There usually is a small fee. It could be $100, but that typically can be passed on to your customer. So if you have $1 million liability policy and you go work for a large company that requires $5 million, you call your insurance up for $150. They give you $5 million for a week or two or however long you need it, and you pass that expense on to your customer. For those of you who have used the FAA website to research other exemptions, we actually recommended it in one of our videos. You may have noticed that the FAA quit putting the letter to the FAA in the granted exemptions. You used to be able to go on there and search a granted exemption, go back down in the PDF and see that the first half of that was the actual letter to the FAA. The FAA quit doing this back in October of 2015, and if you actually go back through all the pages on the granted exemptions and find October 1st, 2015, and prior to that, you'll see that the actual letters to the FAA still remain prior to the granted exemption request. Everything after October 1st up until the current date does not have the letter to the FAA and only shows the granted exemption. So if you're looking for one to research, maybe you want to see somebody else that's in the same industry or the same type of situation, you're going to need to go back to October 1st, 2015 or earlier to see the actual letters to the FAA. One of the last questions we hear a lot, we see comments in a lot of our videos is, well, the FAA doesn't have a leg to stand on. The FAA can't enforce these rules. The FAA has never sued or fined or successfully, charge anybody with operating illegally. That may be the case. Guys, we're not here to say that that's not the case. We're not lawyers. We don't claim to be. All we're helping you do is follow what's currently been laid out by the FAA to operate drones commercially. Hopefully it changes. Hopefully it's easier for everybody to operate. But right now, this is what we have. And you know, we particularly don't care to go out and fight the FAA. We've got better things to do with our time. I'm sure you do as well. If you do want to go out and fight the FAA and worry about a lawsuit, by all means, go for it. Let us know how it works out, and we'll put your results down in the comments below. But until then, this is what we got to work with, and we hope you enjoy it. If you want more information about our Academy courses, you can go to aeroworksproductions.com, click on the Academy link at the top, and we've got a variety of courses from Drones 101 to how to apply for a Section 333. It's one of our most popular videos. We walk you through the entire process. We give you a downloadable template that allows you to basically fill in the blanks. We give you information on the FAA's in-number registration and a lot more information. It's all in there under one course. If you already have your exemption, you want to learn more about how to apply for a special COA for flying in restricted airspace, or I should say limited airspace, like the 5-mile radius around a towered airport or the 3-mile radius around a non-towered airport. We have information under there to cover the special COA application process as well. So guys, like and subscribe to the video, share the video with all your UAV enthusiast friends, and make sure you stay safe and keep the shiny side up, and we'll see you next time.